Welcome, friends, to the My Friend's Basement Studio podcast. Nice. I'm Maxim.
I'm Connor.
And this podcast is a journal of our business.
Actually, someone said that, at the events we went to, they really like the follow our failure.
Follow our
fail.
failure.
No, fail with us.
Fail with us. Come fail with us.
Because it's kind of, it's a good hook, and it's really, we're all, failure's just the steps you take before success.
It's a good podcast tagline. It's a bad business tagline.
Oh, yeah.
that can stay on the recording. It cannot be on the t-shirts.
I mean, it would be fun. Like, only comedians could really do that.
Yeah. But people would have to know. If you were wearing a shirt that's like, My Friend's Basement's podcast studio, come fail with us, it'd be like,
I would ask that question.
yeah,
though.
be like, what is going on?
No, we're not going to do that. But it is funny. We went to the events this week, which we'll get into after what we've learned this week. But yeah, people liked it.
Nice. It's a good idea. I don't know. I feel like this podcast is like just for us.
Potentially, yeah.
But it's good. I think it'll be interesting. I think when we get further down the line and we get more data points for like clients and bookings and stuff, we can really start putting some interesting stuff. But for now, it's just
it's a little diary.
How do we not trip ourselves with our own policies and structures?
Yeah, but I do think, when we say it's just for us, I also think it's not like the other shows we have in here. They're all going after fans of comedy in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
We're not. I don't even know if I told you this, but I did not put our show as a comedy show. I put it as a business show.
Yo, this is new territory for me.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing of like, I wrote out the target audience on the board. It's like comedians and podcasters, it's comedians who want a podcast and make it part of their business.
Yeah.
Or use it to advance their career. And that is the business side of comedy.
Right.
So it is more business. We're not here cracking jokes. If someone were to listen to this and be like, where's how's this comedy? They would be correct.
Yeah. It's comedy cinematic universe, but it's not a comedy podcast.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah. It's sort of a documentary behind the scenes type deal.
Do we want to jump into what we learned this week?
Yeah. Do you have one off the top of your head? You got one first?
I mean, we talked about it a little bit before, and I think it's setting clear expectations, which it was a point I think we made in the first episode.
And this is not managing expectations. This is a different.
This is learning from the business side. Maybe that's what we call it, learning from the business side, but really transparent communication. I think we are learning about certain policies and certain promotions that we have outlined. I know you also want to touch on this. I feel like it's perfectly fine to both kind of bring up the same thing. But I think my big thing though is I don't like conflict. I want to please everybody, but in business you need to embrace some of the conflicts that come up, even if you're not the one causing them. And you need to be really straightforward.
Yeah. There's an art to it. I feel like also I've been leaving a lot of conflicts to you so you can practice.
I'm getting better.
You're getting better.
I asked my roommates to start washing some more dishes.
Whoa.
It went really well.
Nice.
I was like, my roommates asked after, like, how is it for you? And I was like, honestly, it feels like a moral victory. Like, it was a big personal win. Not the fact that, like, I have great roommates. We all get along really, really well. But it's like the fact that I could say it, what was on my mind, holy crap. 6 months ago, probably wouldn't have said anything.
Awesome. Hell yeah. Good developments.
It's been good, but it is, even talking with the people that we met this weekend, and especially the people that I met on Sunday, they're all about like, and the other small business owners, they're all about like, I'm going to tell people no, like I don't mind doing that. Like I need what's right for my business more than I need to please people.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it in an aggressive way.
Yeah.
But they're doing it in a way of like, this is what's best for all of us. I met a podcaster, a person who also like helps with clients creating podcasts, and they'll straight up be like, I don't think you're going to take this as seriously as you should. And so maybe I'm not the right fit for you. And that's like that is not what our business model is about, but I also get it. I think some of the things that we're starting to go through, I'm like, I get it. Like we want the people who really want to be with us and who really want to like respect and utilize the space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of my lessons learned with that is also like business boundaries and boundaries with clients. Like you're right, the people pleasing thing is like, I guess one thing when we kind of first started the studio, I envisioned that we would have a lot of clients that would just be rapid fire in and out and be less like personally invested in.
Yeah.
Versus what we have now is we have like, okay, we have, 12 clients that we're actually very invested in, like in a way. Like it feels like we're tending to a tree, like a apple orchard or something that like is small, instead of like we need more land to have more trees. It's like, what if we just take care of the trees we really have?
Yeah, and I think we've begun discussions about changing up some of the business strategy. We haven't really outlined it yet. I'm sure once we get to that point, we'll probably outline it a bit more because we'll also need to outline it for our clients.
Yeah,
I also think we should call them hosts rather than clients. A little less.
Yeah,
I was thinking about that. Because clients is more like business, and we're all like, it is more personal.
Yeah, it's we're half in between. I think I mentioned Samantha Prosser's comments last week on this podcast.
Yeah.
But like we're like, she appreciate that we're the perfect middle ground of people you're friends with and people you can pay, which is like great. That's what I want.
But I guess too, both of our points is a little bit of like, what is that boundary? And I think it bleeds into comedy too. Like, what is that boundary between like business partner and friend? Or like, if you were on a show and someone's like, hey, I'm going to pay you this money.
Yeah.
But you're like, this is also my buddy and they didn't pay. Like there's a lot of blurred lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is bleeding over, but it's also like, you want to be friends with people that treat you really well.
Yeah.
And I think you want hosts that treat the business really well.
Yeah. And
I don't think for me, just like a personal level, that's something I'm learning a lot over the last 6 months, even since I started.
Yeah.
Like, the whole comment about not being able to do that confrontation 6 months ago. So it's really interesting to learn. And I think that's something that'll continue to happen. I think
totally
for any small business, of vouching for yourself is like the first battle. To be like, oh, what is my rate? What am I allowed to ask people? What is my value?
Yeah.
Oh God, I had an existential crisis. I was like, how do I value myself?
Yeah, the valuing. I think also like, I'll save that one for later. But my small other lessons learned is, you got a business, get business cards.
Yeah. To be honest, I got this stack right here.
Yeah.
From the people we met.
And you're like out there, you're handing out business cards, and I'm sitting there like, just hit him up. I don't know, hit him up. I mean, we'll be in the same place.
To be honest, though, it's even better if someone's like, hey, I'm going to put my number in your phone. Because then it's like, because there's always like like we're friendly, we're trading business cards, which I really like. And you never know when you're going to need it. But there's also another level of meeting someone. They're like, we're going to stay in touch.
I struggle with that level of meeting people. I feel like I meet people and I want to passively incorporate them into my pool of resources. I'm not like, I don't foster like very active new relationships with people. Like it's kind of, I don't know, it's the comedy thing where it's like, I go to a mic, there's someone there, they have some funny jokes, like, oh, I like them. Then like next time they come, then like maybe we talk. And then just over time, you build a natural relationship.
Yeah.
So I'm like, with business networking, I'm almost like, add me on Instagram. But it was funny because this is an anecdote from a good friend, Caleb Clark, is he said he went on a date with some girl. Yeah. And at the end of it, he was like, yo, so like, can we add each other on Instagram? And she was like, no. I think it was a date or something else. But it's funny because comedians in New York City, Instagram is a networking tool. It's the thing that you would rather communicate with and add someone with over their phone number. And for regular people, Instagram is a much more personal like thing, and it's different. So, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even really use my personal Instagram that much. I have, I don't know. I don't have that many followers, but I have over 1,000 followers on my own personal one. And the studio has we're over 330 now, which is cool considering we're not that active.
Yeah.
But we reach more people through the business one than I do on my own personal one.
Absolutely.
When we post, not with the reels and stuff like stories and two people sharing, but it is a business tool in my head.
Right. It totally is. And like for me, I'm like, I don't know. I could get better about truly networking. Like I don't want to change my LinkedIn yet though.
Yeah.
But it's like I need to get cards. I do need to get that's the moral of the story. It's like I need a quick way.
We'll get some for the studio.
I need a quick way to get in touch with people, and I should probably just have cards that literally have my link tree on them, because you go to my link tree, it's like everything that I do, all my projects are there. So it's really long, which is not good to look at, but if you go in there and you scroll, you'll find what you're looking for. I need a website. Another day.
Yeah. Do you want to jump into what we learned?
Yeah, I guess. Okay, so outline of what
we
did. Connor found two networking events for podcasters, and the first one was called
the Gotham Studio Podcaster Happy Hour. I think I don't know if that was the official name, but it was a happy hour
at Gotham,
and then Squadcast was the co-sponsor of the event.
Yeah, so we went to that. We got drunk for free.
That was sweet.
It was great.
They had a lot of beer. I probably had like 4 or 5 beers. I had 4 beers.
I had 3. I'm a bit of a lightweight though. And let me tell you though, when I got home, I was so happy to just sit on the couch. There was so much standing.
Yes. Okay. So we're at the event. We're in the first crew that shows up.
Yeah.
And we're not, I'm not a traditionally early person. So what was your first impression as people were entering the first couple conversations?
Okay, first couple conversations. I think I always shat on networking events until I went to this one.
It was fun. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it was good. It was like, I think one of the things that feels different, right, is when you go to a networking for your job. Like they make you go to a networking event.
Yeah,
you're an employee. You're like, I don't need to make connections unless I'm looking for a new job, basically. But this felt like a networking event for people who. It almost felt more like a hobby networking event.
Yeah.
But these people are professionals. They make money off these things. So it was kind of like everyone's kind of in a lighthearted mood. Like, oh, what do you do? Like, what is your role in podcasting? What's your background? All this. Initially, when there was very few people there, I was like, classic blunder of showing up early on my part. But I grabbed a White Claw pretty quick. I was like, I'm going to drink and it'll be chill.
It filled up pretty quick. And I also felt like I'm not good at interjecting in the middle of other people's conversations because it was a small group when we first got there.
Yeah.
It was natural, like, oh, who are you? There was no other option but to talk with us.
Yeah.
I think so. We were at another studio and we befriended someone who was at the studio, Dominique, super nice towards the end of the night. But at the beginning, a lot of people were like, your studio, isn't this like a conflict of interest?
Yeah, being at another studio.
I didn't even think about that, to be honest.
No way. I'm like, because also we're in, like we explained to lots of people, is that the comedy world is not nearly as competitive as people would think it is.
And also,
especially in New York City.
We're also a different price point.
Right.
Which
a couple orders of magnitude.
Yeah, it's like an engineer, which we provide on every recording is more costs more at some studios than a full recording in ours.
Yeah,
which makes sense, but it's also their audience are people that can afford that. And what I said to them was like, when people ask those questions, like the people that can afford to come to these places should go there.
Yeah,
like if they're really in that position. Because there's a lot of great resources out there. We are filling a gap in the market.
Yeah. So like, I guess that was a cool thing. I told you this on the way is like, I texted Connor, I was like, dress nice because I think there's going to be grownups there.
Yeah.
But also on the way I told you, I was like, I think to keep in mind is like in our world, we are so oversaturated with comedy podcasts and content that it feels like, oh, we're going to go there and it's going to be 1,000 other people with comedy podcasts. But in reality, the truth is that it's probably going to be professional podcasters. And like we might not we might be a little out of place, but we have something special that these people don't have.
I really think we were unique, very unique in that first event. The other piece that you said, there's a lot of grown-ups there. It was mostly people our age.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too.
I was very surprised by that, and we're not going to jump into the next one yet, but the next one was not the same demographic.
Whoa.
It was the demographic you might have guessed.
Damn. Okay. Yeah, because when we got there, it was like, I was surprised. It was like, okay, this is like probably average 25 to 35 age range at the first event.
Yeah.
Kind of weighted more on the late 20s phase.
Yeah.
But yeah, most people we talked to were like, their podcasts are like news or narrative, like fiction podcasts or true crime. So like what by our like definitions we would consider like heavily edited podcasts, right?
Yeah.
With like clips, interviews, narration, cuts, music, like
people at multiple
scripts.
roles.
Yeah.
Someone who is just scripting, someone who is just producing, someone who is just editing.
Yeah.
Which is not the world we're in.
Not the world we're in at all, which is do it all yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's what other comedians do as well.
Yeah. I mean, and it's kind of fun to see that. I guess one thing I really liked about the event is it was like, I told you last week, it's like, I'm ready to find out the things that I don't know that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And someone asked me last night, they're like, oh, do you think you made like valuable like connections from this networking thing? And I was like, I don't know if I made necessarily valuable connections, but I had it was a very good perspective shift. Like how high the food chain goes up, the type of money people are making, the way that they're making it, what types of podcasts they have, how you can just have a job working on another person's podcast and you are not on the podcast.
And it's like a full-time benefits maybe type of job.
People are like literally like, I don't want to have my own podcast. I just want to produce them. I'm like, are you fucking crazy? What is wrong with you?
You're not growing your audience?
Yeah. So that was the big one for me. And like one of the podcasters we met, my rule on podcasts is I name drop if I have something nice to say.
For sure.
Cool rule. Okay.
Yeah.
So we met a man named Jack, and he has a podcast called CFO Thought Leader.
Yeah. Which
is such a different universe of podcasts, but actually pretty similar to what I do on Don't Quit Your Day Job. But what the whole show is he interviews CFOs remotely twice a week, and he publishes their interviews on LinkedIn. And he's been a full-time podcaster for like 7 years because he was explaining to us that he got sponsors early because the demographic of people who are listening to CFO focused podcasts, it's a wealthy demographic. So even if your listener pool is not huge, it's a listener pool with a lot of resources. So it's kind of this like, when he was talking about like, this is like a weird, like magical blend of things that I would never have thought to put together, you know?
It's also an example of knowing your niche.
Right.
And then really making use of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of a thing we talked about last time. We've been talking about in general. I'm sure we'll maybe just do an episode on niching down. But I was a lot of the podcasts that we had met have like a very specific theme.
Very specific.
I will also echo though, I feel like that event was not like, oh, I met someone who I can learn from, a mentor type of situation. It was very social, like, and for me, I feel very awkward being like, I'm not the put a business card in your hand, contact me, follow me on Instagram right now. I'm there to meet people. Like the people, I hope, and maybe I'm naive and maybe this will change with time, but I'm hoping that, you show up in those places and you make genuine connections with people.
Yeah.
You will find the people that are going to stick around. Or if you have a really specific question at the time, you'll ask more, and if they have a common interest, that common interest will come out and you'll forge a connection.
Right.
But if you're just there, like trying to butt in and like make sure everyone knows your name, that's not me.
No.
I don't think that's you. And that was just, I think we just went, we drank, we had a good time. And
once I
learned
got two
lot.
drinks in, I was like, all right, let's talk. Let's talk podcasting.
There were really cool people there, and it was just a good hangout. And I think that's the type of thing we've done one community event. It'd be sweet to one day have a space that is like that. And we're just there. We're supplying free beer, free drinks, free food. Come and hang out, talk to other people. it was for the goal of the event, which was probably just hanging out and showcasing the space. It did really well.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, it was great. It was a lot of fun. And one day too with our personal studio events, I'm like, I almost want to just be like, okay, next event, put it on like an email list or something to get like, because I mean, our last one was like comedians we know. They're all great. It was fun, but I'm like, we could also expand like the circle of people who are coming to hang. I don't know. But yeah, I'm like very like, okay, I'm going to go there. We're going to tell people what our deal is. We're going to see their reactions. We're going to learn about what their deal is and kind of feel it out. Maybe we'll get some inspiration or something. Ended up making like having a few good conversations. I'd rather have like in the 2.5 hours, I'd rather have like 3 or 4 really great conversations than just like meet every single person, you know? So
yeah. And there was one person, they took our information. I didn't take theirs. Which, business tip right here. Always get their information.
Yeah.
But also I'm like, in that type of setting, I'm like, I'm going to ask it. And if they're not saying yes, I'm not going to force it.
Right.
Because it's just not the mood.
Yeah. I also there was one other comedian there who I hadn't met before, but
they followed us, I think.
Yeah. I bumped in. I was basically like, he was looking for a podcast or something. His name's Brian, and he came over and I was talking about our thing. He's like, "Oh, I'm a comedian too." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, where are you at?" He's like, "I live in Hell's Kitchen." So it was like, oh, that's why we haven't like overlapped yet. But we just talked about mics and stuff, and he was actually there because he works for these types of things, as like in like voice acting management or whatever.
Very cool.
I'm like outing him too much about too much personal.
No, he's really nice.
He was really nice, and I was just like, okay, well, I'm gonna be real, like it was really good meeting you, but like because we're comics, we're gonna cross paths again, you know.
I think the takeaway from that event was like, and my takeaway in general was like, we have a really good thing going with natural word of mouth right now.
Right.
Our issue is not getting clients in here. We're almost at a point where we need to figure out some things about streamlining management of clients. And so it's more important that people know we exist.
Yeah.
And then we keep up the word of mouth versus like, I'm going here to sign 3 clients tonight.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe those people that did express interest will reach out, and it's one of those things where like you put it out into the universe, maybe in some time, you know, when they're ready to launch a podcast, they'll come through. But
I mean, we left this event. I was like, we should go to one of these a month, or like figure out something to do. Cause the overall mood was I walked away from that night being like, there is so much possible with this. Like we just need to keep an influx of new, fresh ideas basically. Yeah. And I think that's the key is like, if we keep going to these types of events, we're going to find the puzzle pieces we need over time to be like, okay, this is how we should be doing it. Or like, here's how we should attack this, you know?
Yeah.
So
takeaway, networking events, good.
Good. Also good for free drinks. Very good.
Yeah, very good.
All right. Okay. So you went to one on yesterday.
Yeah, it was a convention. Let me make sure. I always want to make sure I get these things right. I went to the Podfest meetup tour. Podfest is a thing that happens once a year, usually in person. The last time was in Orlando. It seemed really cool. Hopefully we'll get there one day. And then it was also the NYC Podcasters second annual mini con. It was,
and those were overlapped in one
so
event.
Basically NYC Podcasters is a thing. Podfest is a thing. They collaborated to put on this convention. And it was 2 hours basically of speakers with some breaks. And this is something I really appreciate. Well, there's 2 things. There are a lot of things I really appreciate. But one thing about running the conference, the convention, they were really strict on their speakers' times. And they're like, hey, we're going to ring this bell. Like, they had a cowbell. They're like, if you hear that, it's time to wrap up. Because they're like, we want to respect everyone's time. Because I feel like the downside of those types of things, you just have some long-winded people who are really just loving the stage time. And no, they ran it really efficiently. They had good breaks, so time to kind of meet some people. And then afterwards, there was a gathering at a bar. And
not free drinks.
Free appetizers though.
Oh, free appetizers.
Yeah, they were good. And like signing up for the NYC Radio Listserv, if you don't know what that is, check it out. Go find it. I can add you. So I guess if you email My Friend's Basement Studio, I can try and add you. But I got in tickets for free because of the listserv. And there's a lot of good advice. I wrote down notes because I knew I wasn't going to remember it all.
So was there so these are advice from the speakers that you saw?
Advice from the speakers, but also there was a networking after. And I want to get into that because that was equally cool.
Okay.
Like I said, very different demographic.
Older?
I was I would guess I was the third youngest person there.
Wow.
And there was people, I would guess the age of most people's like, you could guess that they would have children. So it was very, very different. There was a lot of like really good speakers. One thing that kept on coming up over and over again, though, was know your whys as a podcaster and as as a show.
Okay.
Know what your value is. Know why you are creating the show. Know why it's worthwhile to keep going. Because if you don't identify those things, you're not going to have a mission or a niche for your show, and you're going to give up on it pretty easily.
Right.
So it's a lot about like really understand those things, because that was like when you're not getting the numbers, if you're really passionate about it, will keep you going.
Right.
So I thought that was very cool. What is it? Let me go through these business cards right here, which I'm sure you can see if you're watching online. But Podfest, there's a guy named Chris who was running there. He gave me his business card. They were very intentional. Actually, a really fun thing was they only shouted out 2 people, and it might have they just chose the youngest people. But at the top, they said they said our names. They said your name incorrectly, Maxim.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's correct actually.
Have I been saying it wrong the whole time?
No. It's not how I say it, but it's how literally everyone else on the planet says it. It's how the Russians say it.
So they gave us a shout out, and they're literally like, they're just like, are you here? And I raised my hand. I thought they were going to do that for everyone throughout. It was just 2, and we were one of them.
Yeah.
And they're like, tell us what your rates are. And I was like, oh.
In front of everybody?
In front of everyone. This is the first like 10 minutes. But it was really cool. Because I did learn a lot about like where our rates are in general.
So what happened when you said that?
They're just like, all right, go up and talk to Connor, because they had already started. So the next thing was speakers. So, but it allowed everyone to get to know me and what we were about very quickly.
Whoa.
And that was, so like people were coming up to me and be like, hey, I want to talk to you about your studio. In the little breaks they had, and that led to the networking event being really fruitful, because people are like, I know who you are. And it was, again,
damn, I missed the good one.
it was not this is for everyone's getting a shout out and we're all getting to know each other.
Yeah.
It was 2 people and we got one of them. And Chris, the guy who runs Podfest, I got to send him an email because we're recording on a different day. We're recording on a Monday. We usually record on a Thursday. He wanted to talk at the networking event. Basically was like, we didn't get a chance to because I was talking to some other people, but he's like, if there's anything I can do to help your business, I want to. Please email me so we can stay in touch.
Very cool.
It was really cool.
Let's have him on this podcast.
He's based in Orlando. He was the one.
Let's fly him out.
But there was a lot of that, and like Lee was the name of the other host.
Okay.
Associated with NYC Podcasters, and similarly super helpful. Like I was moving in the networking event after. And she was like, "Oh, you're leaving already?" I was like, "No, I'm just going to the bathroom." Like making sure that we had a chance to talk to everyone. So it was really cool.
What kind of comments do people have about our business thus far?
So it was like,
you're like, hey, repeat that so I can take a note.
No. It was, I'm pulling up names here. I'm searching through my phone because I met so many people that were really helpful. I think the thing that bled through was passion for the space.
Right.
When like we have a clear mission that we're trying to stay at this price point so we can serve a community, and no one knocked that.
Right.
I do think
they're like, your rates are too low.
No one said that, but they're like, I met this guy named Corey.
Okay.
He runs the Black Label Media LLC, Black Podcasters Association. He has done a similar thing with building a studio. He's out in Queens. Really good guy. We talked at the networking event for a long time, and basically was like, hey, I've been in your shoes. Let's hop on a call this week. And if I can help you avoid one of the mistakes I've made, I've done a good job. He like, again, one of the people that put their numbers in my phone.
Hell yeah.
Is like, let's
shout
talk.
out Corey. Thank you. Very excited to find out what he has to say.
Yeah, me too. Similar experiences. Yeah, price. No one was like, don't do that. No one's like, raise your price point.
Yeah,
no one was like, you're undercutting, which was the same thing at the first event.
Yeah.
And I think the podcaster community seems very similar to the stand-up one. We're like, no one's trying to compete here.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough room for all of us.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see people who are like, maybe tried a lower price point, and they're like, maybe run into some of the things that we may run into in terms of, if you're at a lower price point, we might have a higher rotation of people. We might have people that are trying it out. And I think that's going to be okay. We're going to need to figure out what it looks like to have people trying it out to keep our mission. And then what does it look like for the people who are really in here, really trying to grow their show? What can we do to provide them more? Mm-hmm. So there's some balance things, but there's a lot of like logistics. One of the things Corey said to me that speaks a lot to me. It was like, pay the people you hire, your freelancers, their full rate. That goes such a far way. I mean, that's something we've always been thinking about. It was just like, all right, we're on the right track. And every conversation I had was like, it was clear from the passion that I was talking with, and just like genuinely trying to seek information from these people who have done it, that they wanted to share and they wanted to help. I think I'm going to wrap up with some of the tips that Chris from Podfest gave, because there's one in there that you're really going to like.
Specific things.
But I also met, got all of the cards here. It's a little bit scattered. Richard Butler from RageWorks, the network. Mm-hmm. He's built a network. Honestly, I'm just shouting it out because he just had so much good advice. Like he had some quotes just in conversation. I was like, I got to write that down. Was it, I know this one's from him. Let me see. Wait by the river long enough, you'll see your enemy float by. That wasn't his, but he had said it, but he talked about that with podcasts. It's like, there's 10 people in your niche. It's a longevity game. Be there, always be consistent. And if you keep on doing it, other people are going to drop out and you will be the person in that space. Yeah. And that is what we've talked about, consistency. Yep. He also talks about like being genuine on the mic. Like, hey, it's not, if you're trying to be consistent. Not
editing sneezes.
Yeah. But like, if you're not feeling it someday, your audience is also going to hear that. Right. Like so it's like, hey, maybe either address that or be like, hey, y'all, I don't want to leave you waiting, but like today's just not my day. I'll be back next week. Which was an interesting idea. He also brought up the idea of like guest hosts. You're not built for every role. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you're really good at hosting and that's what you should do. And then you should hire a videographer and an editor. Maybe you're really good at speaking, but you're better off as the second mic rather than the host. Mm-hmm. Just like the different roles and being okay with embracing that. Right. But he was incredibly helpful. One other person I met it was really cool to meet him. Wally Green. He's a professional tennis player and he also owns Spins in New York. Oh yeah. And all of them. I met him. He was like a special guest. I walked in halfway and they're like, we just had someone pop in who's going to talk. He shared a story about ping pong diplomacy. And he also talked about social media, which is something that we are trying to figure out. And he said something interesting. He said, your clips should be no longer than 10 to 15 seconds.
That's fair.
And I was like, that is such a relief. That is such a relief to hear, because we're editing like over like a minute long clips. So if I'm thinking we're trying to, get a lot of clips out, if I can make 4 clips that make 1 minute versus 1 clip that makes 1 minute, like I can produce more, which is kind of the goal in some of our strategies. The
editing style might need to be figured out a little bit more to get those clips like quick, but
it's not even that. So the other piece of it was, we're not necessarily like, either if it's really funny, we got to share that moment, but it needs to be like every word is building to the punchline. Yeah. Not like a long setup, or we cut it where we don't necessarily end it with, what the joke is. If there's something building, cut it before we reveal what it is, because the purpose of using these clips
is to bring people in.
Exactly. So they're like, oh, I got to hear the answer to that.
Yeah.
They're going to go to the podcast. So it's very interesting. And then I had a chance at the end. It was kind of dwindling down while I was sitting down with another podcaster, and he was sitting next to me. He was like, hey, sorry, I just want to ask a quick question. Like, does it, even for podcasts, you think 10 to 15 seconds works? And he goes, yeah, for sure. And then we talked for like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And he went through his TikTok. He looked at our Instagram, basically was going through and kind of like testing me on things that I see that are working and what aren't working, kind of went through how the different algorithms work.
Yeah.
It was incredibly cool because I was like, oh, I said to him before we had the chance to speak, after he spoke during the convention part, I just ran into him. I was like, hey, my business partner's fiance absolutely loves your bars.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, thanks so much. I just go back to my seat. I was like, cool interaction. I'm sure he's busy. A lot of people are going to talk to him. But he hung out the entire time. He and I were the last people at the networking part, just talking. We walked back to the subway together, and he really gave me a lot of time, and he really wants to stay in touch.
Nice.
And so it was like, I honestly thought, I was like, oh, we just did networking on Friday. I'm a little burnt out. I'll probably be there. I want to go home and work on some stuff, but I stayed, and everyone who I talked to had nothing but support, nothing but knowledge and insight, and like really gave me the time of day. Not because I'm like, hey, come use our studio.
Yeah.
But it was literally like, I'm trying to learn these things. You probably know what it is.
Yeah.
Can you talk about it? And then as soon as you talk about something that someone else is passionate about, they light up. I mean, that was the thing with Wally when I talked with him about a TikTok. We talked for 2 hours because that's what he's really into right now. So if you find those things and you enter those spaces being like, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to be really genuine, you're going to find other people's passions, and you're going to get a lot of good information out of it.
Totally. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
What other do you have other specific things that came up?
So here's this was Chris's, he had 10 tips at the end. I got to clean these up for the visual purposes.
They can barely see them.
Oh, they know though. Okay. There's a place called podlottery.com where you have to give honest reviews to get honest reviews. So you really have to listen to the episode, but that's how you can get more reviews. So podlottery.com. I don't know. Maybe I want to do all of them because you probably should go to Podfest to get all of them.
No, do all of them.
Okay.
Because I need them.
Yeah, well, I'm going to share them with you.
Do all of them right now.
Podmatch. I forget what that was. It was a website. Podmatch. Look it up. We'll put the links to this stuff in the description as well. But I think it's matches you with like guests.
Oh, okay.
So you go on and apply, and then you can like cross promote that way too. The headliner.app, disco podcast was a discovery tool. Basically with this, there's like a new website that can help you get discovered a little bit more. But he also said, make sure you're testing these things because sometimes they can be working really well and then they stop working well. Or vice versa, they're in beta and then they finally launch and they start doing well. I think Disco app was on that beta and now they're doing well. So headliner.app, do promo swaps. One of the ways to do it is Tink Media. That's a good place to do some promo swaps, try and find some people. Advertise Cast. Let me see. I really should have.
These are all like websites.
Yeah, these are the first couple were websites.
I thought they were going to be like quotes and there's narrative advice.
No. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It might not all be great. But it's basically like paying for ad space.
Yeah.
On some stuff. This is the one that I knew you would like. He was going through his list. It's a good list. A lot of like concrete, not like stick with it. You know.
Yeah.
He said, get stickers.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
that's what I'm about.
Yeah, I was like, all right, if you're saying it, I'm on board.
What number was that? Number 1?
No. No, it was not. It was, I think it was number 7. There's one in there that I remember I jumped over to, but is
get stickers is like, that's my game, baby.
Said stick around. A lot of people at the thing afterwards are handing out stickers. I do think in the case where you're trying to like make connections to help build a business cards are the way to go. But if you're promoting a show, yeah, hand them a sticker, a random person a sticker. Makes a lot of sense. This is a really good one. It was Spend $1 a day. So you have a really good guest on, a phenomenal guest with a good fan base. Spend $1 a day on ad spend advertising that episode to their audience on social media.
Whoa.
Because they already want to listen to that person. It's a low cost, $365. And then maybe they're like, oh, I really like this host. Let me check something else out.
Cool.
So that was interesting. I think that's going to come into play for us at some point. Maybe even sooner than we think with some of the guests we've had on some shows. There's another one we touched upon. It's deliver the brand promise of your show. So basically find your why, stick with your why.
Yeah.
But like if you're a show about meditation, make sure your meditation or whatever you're just talking about meditation is actually
Don't
working.
be a poser.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't be a pod poser. Posecaster.
And then they said there's a Podfest messenger. So Podfest is what Chris works for, people that put on the event. Basically, there's an app that can promote your show. Like I think it's a paid spot or something, and people on there can click directly on your show. And then I think it was just also more community building. I'm gonna check these all out. Again, these are all phone notes as he's saying it. So I'm trying to write them down, and I'm sure we can clarify some. And if some are really working for us, we'll share some more.
Why did they not record the event as the podcast?
I think they were recording it because they did say to someone like, "Hey, make sure you're using the microphone because we're recording this." But I don't know where that's gonna live.
Yeah, but good stuff. Good stuff to know. I feel like podcast resources that help you in any way connect to other podcasts or listeners are super valuable. And
it's also, there's so many random things out there. So basically we're getting a vetted list of stuff that are like, hey, this is working for us. We are people in this space. This is where we go. Versus us, we're probably going to click around for a couple hours.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. The event was really run well. They really focused on community. They promoted us right away. And then afterwards they were like, I didn't get to meet everyone, where I feel like we did meet a little bit more people at the first place because there's just so many people bouncing around in larger groups. I had some really good one-on-one conversations, and I had the extra ticket because you were here covering at the studio, and I invited a few friends who like might have been interesting, and it would have been so awkward if they showed up because they like literally gave us a shout out, and then I would have felt obligated to leave the networking event early.
Right.
So the big takeaway was like, feel, for me as a human, was like feel like you belong in that space, which I did the whole time. And then also like showing up is probably the most important thing. Because I literally was like, I really was like, I'm kind of tired. I know I have a lot of stuff coming up this week. Maybe I don't go, but I'm like, also I need to get out of the house because I'm not going to leave the rest of this week. But literally the only thing was the only difference between what I learned and what I didn't learn was showing up. Like that was the only barrier that I had to cross, and I'm very thankful I did. There was someone else there too who was the person younger than me at the networking event, just graduated college, and a lot of people were giving her kudos as well, to be like, you are here, there's literally no one else who has just graduated college here. You are trying to find the right connections, seeking out the right advice. Like, good on you.
I mean, I never thought about these meetup things as like a possibility to like do good for us, because it's like, you know, podcasting is like, yeah, dude, I can record a podcast and release it myself. Like, what is showing up besides releasing an episode every week? But it makes sense. Like, if you put yourself out there and make connections, and in like, it's weird because it's like an ambiguous space. I feel like the comedy scene is a tangible space where it's like, I'm going here to do this, to practice. I'm going to meet people and come back and I have friends and I have comedy now. But like being like, oh, the podcasting and networking thing, it's like, oh, you know, I've got my podcast, it's going fine, whatever, I don't need it. But it's like, oh no, when you show up, it's like, these are all valuable things. Like, it just makes me want to go to more.
As being the new people on the block, like we're, a lot of people, I think, see themselves in us in some way. And it is an online community, though. Podcasting is a digital medium. And so when people, it's not as common for them probably to meet in physical spaces outside of like the studio with a co-host. So yeah, it was super cool. Again, I kind of the same with you. I've been to networking stuff for jobs, and I'm like, unless you're going to hire me and it's going to be a better position, I have no interest.
Yeah.
But I think it speaks volumes to like pursuing knowledge and things you're passionate about, because you can turn them into jobs. And yeah, incredibly valuable. I would continue going back to stuff like that, especially because I think about how much you enjoy talking about things you enjoy.
Right.
That's literally what you're doing with other people who are just as passionate, if not more passionate.
Yeah. Very cool. Did you want to close out with some highlights?
Yeah, I guess I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Did the events meet the expectation? Where in the expectations versus reality were these events?
I'd say exceed.
Yeah.
Exceed for the first one. I mean, it's nice to go to a place where people are open to talking and they're talking about something I'm interested in, and they actually are interested in what we have as well. Yeah. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm like going here, but none of this is really what I was looking for, or people aren't interested in what I'm doing. It was like a good give and take with everything. So definitely exceed. I would definitely love to go to more for sure. Because this is stuff I don't give a shit about. Okay. It's like business and marketing and like this networking and corporatizing and strategizing. Like that's stuff I just don't care about. And it's literally taken me to be doing podcasts or comedy for 4 years, podcasting for like 2.5, to be like, all right, I'm interested, you know? Yeah. It took a long time to get here, but now I'm like, okay, now I actually want to hear all the things people have to say and things people have to share, because we have a thing that we can apply it to, you know?
We're adding value. I will say too, is very cute's not the right word, but I'll use it. You learn so much stuff like right away about the different roles in podcasting. You're like, I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, like these people are like, oh, this person is doing the interviews for the podcast, but they're not putting her on the podcast. Yeah. They're writing scripts.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Like, you're writing questions for the interview. You don't interview as you go.
Yeah.
Come on. So.
Yeah, I would say same, exceeds. And I think the other piece that like helped is especially the second one. The first one, I knew we were going together. Like, we'll figure it out. But the second one, I was just wondering, like, really, I don't know what I'm taking out of this. Like, hopefully I'll learn some things, obviously, but it wasn't like, I'm trying to learn X, Y, or Z. It was just like, oh, I think that mindset helped me learn so much more than what I would have if I was like, I'm just trying to figure out how to grow my show.
Yeah. It feels like I mentioned earlier, it's like everyone has like a little puzzle piece. And I think if we get enough of those and we start fitting them together, we're going to figure out some stuff that like really works. And then we have a bigger puzzle piece.
And I will say, I think that's the last thing I'll say on it too, is like you'll meet people who really champion your stuff, who are in your space.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I really feel like there's some people that will play a significant role in how we continue to shape this, whether it's through one piece of information or continuous support.
Right. Totally. Yeah. So
highlights from the week. This was a week. I mean, those were kind of the highlights.
It was all kind of a highlight, but dude, let me tell you what, this weekend we went to the networking thing.
Yeah.
Saturday I did 2 back-to-back comedy shows, and then we went to
Maxim's highlights.
2 back-to-back birthday parties.
Yeah.
And then yesterday I came here, went home, and then we went to a comedy show where it was like everyone who had been at the 2 birthday parties
was also there,
was hanging out the show, and I could tell it was funny looking around. It was like all these comedians we love. Everyone is exhausted. Everyone is like, I'm leaving right after this.
Yeah.
So overall, I had a good weekend. I felt like I definitely burnt the candle at both ends in terms of my social energy. But I think the highlight was just like getting exposed to things that I had no idea could be possible.
Yeah.
Because what is it? Like literally like before these things, I thought, okay, to make it in podcasting, I need to get like 10,000 downloads an episode or listens an episode. And that's just the only way you're going to make it.
Yeah.
It's not true. There's like a lot of ways to make it. There's a lot of ways to define a niche. And I mean, I mentioned this to you before we recorded, is I think my weekly Gundam podcast is on track to beat out Don't Quit Your Day Job in listenership, solely because it's a niche. It's like, oh, I'm talking about this specific thing that I know like these 50,000, 100,000 people are really into. And like, even if 5% of them tune in, that's a lot of listeners for me. So building the niche, it's good learning. It's also nice. I will say this, like, this is just like personal. Having different shows that are different things is very cool. To like kind of, I'm not racing them against each other, but it is like betting on a new horse. You're like, oh, I finally get to try something else, see how this does, you know? Very cool.
Yeah. I will say, like, I think a general takeaway from the weekend too was like, the niche thing. There's a lot of ways to define it, but it's also like, if you're doing the general thing, you either need to be a celebrity or just the best at it.
You need to be great.
Like the buddy podcast that people know.
Yeah.
It's because they know the celebrity in a lot of ways, or they were just super funny, or they were backed by a network.
Yeah.
Like that like become more ubiquitous, or like this is clearly a full-time job that you can, or a big piece of your income.
Right.
And so it just made me realize, like, oh, if you're going to be a buddy podcast or do a comedy podcast, you're going to brand it as comedy. You just need to be funny all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm that person. I'm not funny all the time. I think I'm turning more into a storyteller, but I think there are ideas I can execute.
We're becoming squares.
But it was one of those, like,
yeah,
you really, like, that is the find your why or the value proposition. If you're saying you're a comedy podcast, be funny.
Yeah, dude, that's the thing. Like, literally, even the first event, I walked away from it and I literally was doubting even Don't Quit Your Day Job as a format. It's like everything I've learned, like, done for this show. And it comes back to, this is a very broad podcast. And just because of the nature of it, it's going to be extra, extra hard to bring people in. But I'm like, it's a project I love and I'm proud of. So I'm going to keep going.
Manage expectations.
Exactly. But just the little things, you just find the niche and just like go after it, because this guy's interviewing CFOs and making a living off of it. Who would have thought of that?
Yeah,
you know,
crazy.
It's like, it's so smart. And like other things, like, okay, so now I'm just reviewing an anime every week and I'm going to be getting like a lot more listeners. I got to do a thing I like and I get to have listeners. So it's all growth stuff, but it's also really exciting because like this weekend is a thing that, like, who would have thought that me and you in your bedroom with your mattress flipped up against the wall would be like with Mike stands on our laps, like recording small town radio, would once be at a place where people are like, oh, you guys are doing something really cool, you know, and have something that actually stands out from the pack. Yeah. Which is kind of fun. Like, I don't want to be another burnout story for like, oh, there was a small studio who did that and they burned out. I want to I want to make sure like we do this and we make it, you know?
Yeah. And I think the only way to do that is to help the people that come in here make it as well.
Yeah.
I'll say my highlight. I'll do it quickly because I think we're over time. A little bit over what we were hoping to do. We have, well, I guess we're waiting a little bit more. We have verbal agreements with someone who I met through a friend to come and record a podcast here. And it was the first time I saw this friend this weekend. And he made the joke. He's like, man, you're always pitching the space. And like, it's what I'm not actively like, hey, come do it. I'm getting a lot better at that. Yeah. Just be like, the people that want it will find it. But I brought it up in conversation and he's seen me progress from like, hey, come in. Like, I'll always just joke around with him. Like, oh, you got to do a podcast. And then I met one of his friends. He said, that he was interested in the podcast, and now it's like basically just waiting to put something on the calendar.
Nice.
And I saw him again. He's like, you finally did it. You finally got someone. So it was really cool. That's awesome. Yeah, it's just one of those things though. It's like businesses fundamentally fill a need or like reduce a pain. And that is we're filling a need. Like fundamentally as a business, this is something that people are seeking, and that is probably the most important thing to take away. It's like that wouldn't happen if we didn't have a studio that people were or a space that people were seeking out. The word of mouth would never happen. Right. So we might need to still figure out the business model fully of for like a more robust studio, but we have fundamentally satisfied what it means to be a business. Yeah, definitely. Good job. That's a little too far. We should move these closer. Nice. I was just thinking for the chairs and people high five in general.
But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see where it goes. It's gonna be some work in progress. I'm excited to see what we're gonna be talking about on the show in like 6 months.
Yeah. Do we have any things next week?
Oh man,
talk about promotions a little bit more. What we're trying to do.
Yeah,
Or
let's talk. We could talk about like strategizing promotions. I think also
branding potentially, because the branding's
if the branding comes in, we could talk about that.
It's going to be something more marketing or client related, like business outward facing.
I also think we should
outward facing business.
We should do a technical episode one of these days too. We should talk about what we're using and why we're using it.
Let's do, because the branding should be out.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk with our graphic designer if he wants to share any knowledge, or and then after we'll do the technical.
Or we'll just review it without him.
Look at this.
Yeah. Look at this fucking logo. Look at this guy came up with.
I'm very excited for it.
Nice. Yeah, so we'll figure it out next week. But where can people find you?
They can find me at my friend's basement studio. Not even joking, I'm on there more than my own social media. Really, I only use my own social media to comment on the girl I'm seeing stories.
So my friend's basement student Instagram.
And then my friend's basement at gmail.com. I check that more than I check my personal email. Yep. Our website we've been saying this, but it should be launched
by the time this comes out.
Well, definitely by the time this comes out, but in the actual calendar world, tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then my personal, I'm Connor Kwiecien at Connor_Kwiecien on Venmo. Let's try it out.
Nice. And guys, you can follow me on Instagram at asparaguts, and all of my projects are in my bio. It's asparagus with guts at the end. Or you can come to my Tuesday 5:30 mic at the Tiny Cupboard. You don't have to, but you should. You should be on time too. That'd be nice.
Subscribe to this. If you've made it this far, God bless you.
Yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel.
And then come check out, connect with us for rates and stuff for the studio. Mm-hmm. We'd love to give you a tour if you're really passionate about podcasting.
Yeah. Come here, fight us, argue, create problems.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Oh God, I can't tell if they know. They can see how tired I am.
I'm a little tired. They probably can tell. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, friends. If you didn't catch that, that's what we're calling the consumers of this podcast.
Yeah, you're consumers, but also our friends.
Yeah, it's my friend's basement studio, so you're our friends. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week.
Bye.